Go
Well,
on.
so I'm going to go off script here because he mentions Minnesota. Let's just talk Minnesota right now. So
Let's do it.
Minnesota wrote well, actually go to the prior one, go to the Big Ten one first, just briefly. But if you look at Minnesota, um, so their 5-year average recruiting rank in the Big Ten is 13. So they rank 13th overall out of 18 teams in recruiting. That's not very good, right? Um, their national 5-year average rank, you don't have to go to that one, but it's 43. So they're 43rd in the nation. And by the way, there's 134 Division One teams. So that's not really good. But look at their 5-year win rate, 59% winning rate. And in fact, Minnesota hasn't even had a top 10, well, one 10th ranked class in 2024. Other than that, they're in double digits and really in the second half of recruiting. But it shows that the Big Ten has development programs in allowing a program to overperform on the field relative to their recruiting. And that's the definition of what Minnesota is for sure under PJ Fleck, right? Very good developer of talent. They know who they are. They have a strong culture too, so that they can recruit to that talent. And then, yeah, they're going to steal, a couple players or retain a couple key players. That safety that Ohio State almost got from them. JR maybe can help me out with his name. The Minnesota fan would
Coy
know him
Parrish.
for sure.
Yep.
Coy
Coy Parrish.
Parrish, right? So little difference making players like that, but Minnesota is the type of program they're going to recruit to their culture and to their strength. They're going to have them for 4 and 5 years, and they're going to win a lot of football games with them, right? The definition of what I'd call an overperformer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are the type of programs and these are the type of coaches that do a really good job of not just looking at 40 times, not just looking at arm length and stuff like that, but saying what does this player do well and how can we utilize them in our system? And Minnesota has done a very good job of that. There's other programs here that are highlighted in blue. I know you're going to talk about here in a second that do a good job of that as well. So as far as I'm concerned, you get to a program like Minnesota, and also let's also just be frank. Wisconsin and Minnesota are not scouted like other states are, right? There are a whole lot more scouts down in Florida than there are up in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So there's going to be guys up there that maybe go under the radar or maybe don't go to every single camp and the scouts don't see as much, but they're still good football players. They're still coachable and they can still go to a program and develop and turn into something. That's how you get the guys at North Dakota and South Dakota too, right? That's how it goes. And for all we know, somebody could be a really good hockey player, put on a few pounds and say, I'm going to be an offensive lineman or I'm going to be a tight end or something like that. And then they turn into something because, like I said, they're coachable, they're athletic, and they can turn into something. All right, Jeff, want to get to who do you want to get to next?
All right. So if you go to the Big Ten table, so we're going to talk about overperformers. So this is more of a positive take. So these are where their records on the field are overperforming their recruiting. There's 5 teams here: Iowa, Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, and UCLA. So this is light blue shade. And so let's talk about Iowa first. They're the biggest overperformer by far. So led by 26-year coach Kirk Ferentz. Their Big Ten 5-year average recruiting rank is 9.6. So that's 8th best in the Big Ten. And their national 5-year average rank for recruiting is a solid 33rd in the nation, right? Good, but not great. But their 5-year winning percent is 68%. That's 5th best in the Big Ten. So they are far exceeding on the field their recruiting rankings, which really supports Ferentz's and his staff's reputation of being great developers of talent, knowing their culture, recruiting to that culture, and consistently winning. It also explains why Iowa struggles beating the best teams, right? Their top 20, I don't have the stat, but their top record against top 25 teams is very poor. They just don't have the level of elite skill player and the quantity of skill players to compete with the top teams. So it's mostly a good story, but it's a little frustrating, I know, for Iowa fans. Why can't we win, top 25 games? And the recruiting does partially explain that. The other good news for the Hawkeye fans is that recruiting is trending in a good direction. The last 5 years for Friends is better than the previous 5 years. So really, and this was mentioned earlier, there's certain positions that I would just develop so well. Offensive and defensive line, tight ends and defensive backs. They've shown they can put you in the NFL. We have good coaches. We can help you get there so that you can make the big money. So as long as France is there, I expect this to continue, right? They're going to struggle against the biggest teams because they don't have that elite recruiting, but they're going to continue to win a lot of football games. So that's Iowa. So let's talk Washington. The Big Ten newcomer, their 5-year average recruiting ranking is only 11.8. That's 12th best in the Big Ten. Their national 5-year average is 44. So Washington's about 44th in the nation on average. And yet their 5-year win rate is 67%, right? Now, some of that, they are in that's a 5-year win rate. So 4 of the 5 years was in the easier Pac-12 conference. And it also includes and is brought up by going 14-1 in 2023 when they made the championship game against Michigan. But nevertheless, they are over performing against those recruiting rankings. They did have a clunker class in 2022, 95th ranked under Jimmy Lake when he the transition from him to Kalen DeBoer. But if you look at what's really cool about Washington, if you look back to 2016 to 2020, which was under Chris Peterson, his recruiting rankings were like 15th, 29th. He had 3 top 20 finishes. So it's clear to me that Washington under Jed Fish has a clear opportunity to return to being a top 25 like recruiting program. But for now, we're going to put them under the overperformer category. We talked about Minnesota already as an overperformer, so I'm not going to cover that one again. Illinois is another big one. Brett Bielema, he's entering his 5th season in Champaign. It's interesting. They finished 16th in the AP poll. All the two early preseason top 25s have them ranked up there. You would think their recruiting over the last 5 years would reflect, better recruiting for Illinois. Not so much, really. Their last 5 year, their average in the Big Ten, and go the prior one, JR, for the Big Ten table, 13.6 is their average Big Ten ranking. And that's actually tied for 14th place in the Big Ten with UCLA. Bielema's best Big Ten finish was number 11 in 2023. And the 2025 class most recently only finished 12th. Nationally, Illinois only ranked 50th in recruiting over the last 5 years. So it's pretty amazing to me. If you look strictly at recruiting, you would say there's no way this team is going to be in the top 25 for a couple years in a row. But that's exactly what Illinois is going to do. And it really speaks to his player development, developing a culture, knowing how to win, knowing how to game plan. And it's pretty impressive, frankly. I mean, their 5-year win rate is only 52%, but that's going to improve, I think, here as Bielema has gotten his legs under him, so to speak. And then finally, UCLA is our final one here. The main reason they're an overperformer, frankly, is Chip Kelly. He ran the program from 2018 to 2023. The 6 main classes under Kelly's realm were no better than 10th in the Big Ten. And then he had a couple clunkers too. He was 16th in 2022 and 18th in the transition year from Kelly to Deshaun Foster. So the 5-year average for UCLA in the Big Ten is 13.6. So that's 14th. And then nationally, they're 53rd in the nation. So not very good. But despite that, UCLA won a decent amount of games, 58% winning rate over the last 5 years. It really supports Kelly's reputation that he didn't really give a damn, frankly, about recruiting. Wasn't good at it. He's a ball coach, right? He wanted to create game plans, execute the game plans. So he actually kind of overachieved at UCLA, even though UCLA fans would tell you they weren't happy with the overall results. He just didn't recruit nearly at the level he needed. Deshaun Foster in his first class, from a national perspective, it came in ranked 46th, 13th in the Big Ten. So it's too early to tell how he's going to do recruiting wise. I do think, though, UCLA will do better than Chip Kelly, who was kind of, didn't care that much about recruiting. Potentially could have top 30 classes for UCLA. They certainly did back similar to Washington. If you look at UCLA, go to the national one here briefly, JR, the national table. Jim Mora back in 2016, 2017, 2018, nationally, they finished 13th, 20th, and 19th. It's possible at UCLA, you got to line the NLL to be a top 25 like program. They are in the big city of LA, lucrative recruiting base in California. But UCLA is my final. The 5 teams are overperformers. JR, any comments on those 4 since we already covered Minnesota?
Yeah, I find it interesting. We'll get to Indiana here soon with how close Indiana and Illinois are. You know, Indiana obviously with the spectacular season last year, but Illinois, for Brett Bielema to come in and instantly start giving this program top 50 classes when they only had one the 6 years prior to Brett Bielema coming in, that really speaks to his ability to come in, spot talent, recruit them, and bring them into his program. So Brett Bielema, although the numbers are not, are not anything eye popping, they did improve. They are getting better over the 6 year prior to it. Only one top 50 class prior to this year, and they even got top 40 in 2023. So we'll see what they end up this year. I think they're still in the top 10 in recruiting this year. They probably won't stay there, but there's hope this year for Illinois to have a top 20, top 25 class, and that would be really, really big for Illinois if they're able to make that happen. UCLA, you're spot on. I mean, top 20 classes the 3 years prior to Kelly, and then Kelly comes in, and it's like, okay, we'll be outside the top 30. Okay, 61st, it is what it is. Oh, back to 37th.
Brutal.
Okay, 90. Like,
Yeah.
this is just kind of what Chip Kelly was. Didn't really want to recruit. Didn't really want to go out and focus on that. Just wanted to coach ball. And this was an NFL coach who was in college football who wanted to basically be in the NFL, and he eventually got himself there after going to Ohio State to be the offensive coordinator. Good for him. UCLA, as much as he could coach a team up on the field, it was very frustrating for UCLA to not be able to get the good players, and also not to have the NIL in a very good spot. I think that speaks to Deshaun Foster's first season a little bit. Not the best recruiting. He's going to have to work on getting that NIL up there a little bit more and help out in that area. Already commented on Minnesota, so I'm not going to say really anything on them. Washington, good recruiting before. Then they had Kalen DeBoer. Then now they have Jed Fish. Jed Fish seems to be bringing them back to kind of that good recruiting they were at before. Biggest thing with Washington is they just need to find a coach and hold on to him. Washington's done a good job of hiring good coaches over the years. They just got to find one and hold on to them. However they do that, it is a tough place to recruit at. So I do think that impacts things a little bit. I thought Kalen DeBoer was going to be their guy. He seemed like the guy that was going to be their guy, but he went on over to Alabama, and it is what it is. Last one, Iowa. You mentioned how Iowa's been better in the past 5 years. That's really ever since Kirk Ferentz started getting himself in Florida more. There was kind of a push in the last 5 years for Kirk Ferentz to start recruiting the state of Florida a little bit more. They're not necessarily going after the big fish there, but they are going after better players, more athleticism in some cases, some 3 stars there that, maybe they are not that much higher ranked than some guys in Iowa, but they do bring a level of athleticism. And when you have Kirk Ferentz, who is a good developer of talent, he can do some work with those guys. So good on Iowa there.
Good stuff. Any comments to highlight from the audience?
Doreen says, nice breakdown, guys. Thank you, Doreen. Let's see. few comments. Mish thinks Washington is going to fall off. I do think this is a bit of a prove it year for Washington. They need to, Jed Fish needs to prove it with himself. He went 6-6 last year, but that Washington State loss was not great. So does need to prove it this year. Otherwise, they could find themselves on a little bit of a downturn, and that's not what you want with the Washington program. Um,